It is January the 8th, 1923. This is a photograph taken in Manisa al-Shahish from Albert Kahn's archive. Apparently, a villager found a very creative solution for his period by making a door in the hollow of the tree. However, it is a creativity born out of desperation as his house was burned, destroyed, and plundered by the occupant Greek forces. Just like any other house. Albert Kahn is a French banker. Foreseeing the disappearance of cultures while the world is rapidly transforming at the beginning of the 20th century, Kahn sends photographers to all over the world and implements the Archives of the Planet project, which indeed was a very good decision. We can't thank him enough. Coming to Western Anatolia in 1922, Kahn's photographer Frederick Gadmer photographed and recorded the agonizing picture left by the Greeks after the occupation. It's May the 15th, 1919. Greek armies land troops in Izmir. The British High Commissioner of the Allied Forces, Sir Arthur Calthorpe, also the Admiral of the Royal Navy, gave the order for the occupation. Admiral Calthorpe claimed that the Turks committed genocide against the Greek people, ordered the occupation of Izmir by the Greek armies based on the 7th article of the Mudras Armistice between the Ottoman Empire and the Allied States. The Inter-Allied Investigation Commission, which was commissioned by the occupation forces in August 1919 to investigate the events during the occupation period, would include the following sentences in the report it prepared as a result of a 2-month investigation.
Fears of Christian massacres were unjustified. Investigations have shown that attempts to rally Muslims to a Greek massacre were not written by officers in the Turkish constabulary, whose signatures appeared on these documents. These documents are undoubtedly forgeries.
Inter-Allied Commission of Inquiry consisted of Admiral Mark Lambert Bristol, the delegate of the USA, General Robert Hugh Hare, the delegate of Britain, General George Hippolyte Benos, delegate of France, and General Alfredo Dallio, delegate of Italy. The Greek armies are advancing with the enthusiastic cheers of the Greek people. The weather is clear and sunny. It is unlikely to rain soon. There are no Turkish soldiers around. Turkish troops retreated to their barracks in accordance with the orders of the treaty representatives. The consecration ceremony of the troops of the Greek Metropolitan, alongside the occupied roads, had provoked the already panicked Turkish people. After the first individual shot by the Turks in the Konak Square, the Greek troops responded with intense shots against the Turkish people. Greek soldiers fired at the defensive Turkish people, regardless of age and gender, until they ran out of bullets. When they ran out of bullets, they continued to kill with bayonets. This painting is a work of Italian painter Vittorio Pisani. I can't really see much, but he is somewhere in the painting. Yes, Pisani did not portray this work in other works describing the Greek massacres throughout what he had heard. He was right there when all these happened. He was right in the crowd where the screams were rising. In this work of the artist, the raindrops stand out. As it is stated in different sources, the unexpected heavy rain that day made the Greek soldiers leave the square, therefore preventing further loss of lives. The rain detail in the painting is an indication that Pisani described what happened that day by being loyal to the truth. Vittorio Pisani grew up in Esmish. Like his father, he had become a painter. He was a 20-year-old young man when he left the house to walk to Conic Square that day. He witnessed the shooting of his neighbors with whom he had lived in peace for years. Vittorio immediately returned to Italy with his family after their house was raided and looted by Greek soldiers. When the Egyptian princess Kadriye Hussein decided to write a book about the events, she went to Italy and asked Vittorio to draw what he had seen for her book. By painting his experiences, Vittorio transferred to his works the painful memories that he could not describe with words. In Pisani's work, which describes the events in Cordon, a Greek soldier hits the old man on the ground with his rifle, and in the right corner again, two Greek soldiers are dragging a Turk by his legs towards the sea. In this work, the artist depicts the Greek metropolitan Chrysostomos blessing the soldiers who carried out the massacre. The depiction of a Christian clergyman in such a position is not common in other instances. Greek troops had captured and tortured many people from the first day. The Inter-Allied Investigation Commission included the following sentences about Turkish prisoners in the 13th and 14th articles of the report they prepared.
On 15th of May and for several days thereafter, the Greek troops arbitrarily arrested some 2,500 people, including children under the age of 14. Some of the schools were even imprisoned on the Patris. Many of the prisoners were mistreated, robbed, and detained for several days in unacceptable conditions. All the prisoners were robbed. They all had to shout out, "Long live Venizelos," and walk with their hands raised. Some were massacred.
The number of people killed by the occupant Greek forces in a few days had reached 5,000. The committee evaluated the events in the first days of the occupation in the 15th article of the report.
On the 15th and 16th May, countless acts of violence and looting targeted at the Turkish people and their homes took place in the town. Many women were raped. Some people were murdered. The acts of violence and looting were committed for the most part by a mob of Greeks from the town, although it has been proven that soldiers also joined in and that the military authorities took no effective measures to stop the acts of violence and looting until it was too late.
The Greeks advanced into Anatolia and occupied almost all of western Anatolia. Manisa, Balıkesir, Aydın, Kütahya, Bursa, and Eskişehir were all occupied. The resistance of the Turkish militia forces units in Ula, Malgaç, Bergama, Arbeli, Irikli, and Aydın made it possible to stop the Greeks. Greek soldiers mostly responded to these resistances with massacres in which all civilians were killed, regardless of women and children, such as the Menemen events. Western Anatolia was in an agony it had never experienced in its history. Lying in front of the feet of the Greek soldiers posing with a smile, ready to swing their rifle and axe, is a human. This Turkish villager was martyred by torture, with his feet tied and his hands nailed to the ground. When the occupation forces were pushed to the outskirts of Aydın city by the insurgents, the Greeks, who could not stand the combat any longer, had to retreat. But during the retreat, they burned everything they left behind. The members of the commission referred to the retreat of Greek troops from Aden in Article 32 of the report as follows.
The Greeks evacuated the town in the night of 29th June and early hours of 30th June after having committed numerous attacks and other crimes. Some of the fires that broke out in the Turkish quarter in the morning of 29th June started during this engagement. A large number of Turkish men, women and children who were trying to leave the burning quarter were killed for no reason by the Greek soldiers, who were guarding all the exits that led from this quarter to the northern part of the town. There is no doubt that the Greek command and troops ran amok.
The fires that started on 28th of June destroyed 2/3 of the city of Aden, with a population of 20,000, and the rest of the city was plundered. Greek armies reoccupied Aden on the 4th of July with the help of support units. The members of the commission included a very striking statement in their report on this incident.
Before the Greeks returned to Aydin, most of the Turkish population had already left the town and surrounding area to take refuge in the Italian zone or in the Nazilli Denizli region, where it remains today.
Imagine a community fleeing from its occupants to save its life and immigrating to the territory of another state that also occupied its homeland. Maybe they weren't just trying to save their lives. Maybe they were trying to avoid something worse than death. The occupation lasted until the Turkish army repelled the Greek troops with the Great Offensive. The retreating Greeks were burning, destroying and plundering everything in these lands which they understood that they could not return. The sky was covered with smoke all over western Anatolia. The American historian Justin McCarthy described the Greek retreat in his book, Death and Exile, as follows.
The worst destruction of houses, villages, and government, religious, and communal property obviously came during the final Greek retreat. Much of what lay on the Greek line of march was totally destroyed, and there can be no doubt of the fact effective use was made of photography by both the nationalists and Western photographers in documenting the destruction.
Many historians have documented that ethnic cleansing was attempted during the Greek occupation, which lasted more than 3 years. McCarthy, in his book Death and Exile, states that approximately 3,291,000 animals were wasted and 141,874 houses were destroyed. Citing the Lausanne discussions as a source, he states that 1.5 million Anatolian Turks were affected by the Greek occupation. Based again on sources, McCarthy states that 806,000 of this number had to migrate and at least 640,000 Turks lost their lives. Our planet has witnessed many wars throughout its history. Such war crimes have happened all over the world, but such a massacre is rare. Unfortunately, this was not the first Greek persecution of civilians. It is February the 22nd, 1821. In the Morea Peninsula, the southern tip of Greece, great pain, brutality, and shame took its place in the pages of history. Morea was a place where Muslims, Christians, and Jews lived in peace for nearly 400 years. The Greeks, who started the revolt, took an oath not to leave a single soul on the island and put the local people, consisting of Muslims and Jews, to the sword. 40,000 Morea Turks were brutally martyred by the Greeks. The survivors took refuge in the Ottoman fortress in Tripolis, south of the city. After the fall of the castle, which was attacked by Greek gangs for 5 months, the Greeks did not leave a single person behind and killed tens of thousands of Jews as well as 30,000 Muslims. British historian Walter Allison Phillips wrote in his book, The War of Greek Independence, about the Morea massacre as follows.
For 3 days, the miserable inhabitants were given over to the lust and cruelty of a mob of savages. Neither sex nor age was spared. Women and children were tortured before being put to death. His path of triumph was carpeted with corpses. Some remaining Muslims of every age and sex were deliberately led out to nearby mountains and butchered like cattle.
Historian and research writer William St. Clair, who is a senior researcher at the British Studies Institute, summarized the Morea massacre in his book, That Greece Might Still Be Free, based on the memories of foreign officers who served in Tripolis.
Prisoners who were suspected of having concealed their money were tortured. Their arms and legs were cut off, and they were slowly roasted over fires. Pregnant women were cut open, their heads cut off, and dogs' heads stuck between their legs. From Friday to Sunday, the air was filled with the sound of screams and laughter. One Greek boasted that he had personally killed 90 people. The Jewish community were systematically tortured. For weeks afterward, starving Turkish children running helplessly about the ruins were being cut down and shot at by the exultant Greeks. The orgy of genocide exhausted itself in the Morea, only when there were no more Turks to kill.
The leader of the Morea revolt, Theodoros Kalokotronis, claimed in his memoirs that his horse had never stepped on the ground from the city walls to the palace due to the mass of corpses. It is December the 20th, 1963. In the Republic of Cyprus, where Turks and Greeks live together, the Greek authorities have undertaken extensive and systematic attacks for ethnic cleansing to end the existence of Turks on the island and to open the way for union with Greece. In the massacre, where they killed 364 Turks by raiding 103 Turkish villages, 30,000 Turkish Cypriots had to migrate, leaving their land and home. Such a familiar script. On the night of 20th December, the house of Nihat Ilhan, who was working as a doctor in the Turkish regiment in Cyprus, was raided, and his wife and 3 young children were brutally murdered by the Greeks. The photograph of the dead bodies of children stacked on top of each other in the bathtub has been engraved in history as a symbol of barbarism. The Turkish administration of northern Cyprus turned the house where the massacre took place into a museum. The museum was given the name Museum of Barbarism,